back to our Ellipse Unsealed podcast. As always, we have here with us today Mr. Bobby Small, and we have a very special guest today, Mark Musselman. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Savannah.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
Hey
thanks
there,
for
Mark.
having me. Hey, Bobby. Thanks for having me.
Of course, yeah, we love having exciting guests like Mark Musselman on. I've known him a long time. Mark, we were just talking about it before we jumped on. About 25 years now.
Yeah, I think that's about right, give or take a year or two on either side.
We've worked together. We've had fun together. We've probably laughed and cried together at some point. We didn't mention. I think we did one of the things I really enjoyed was that a couple of years we did a kind of a discussion group, a men's discussion group, which was really impactful. I mean, it was just a short couple of years for me, but still reflect back on it, and really love having you on, especially during this time because of where your mindset is and how you go about approaching life and challenges, and wanted to talk about kind of where you are on that. I know you're in the process, and we'll talk about it here in a second, of finishing up a 30-day life. We call it a challenge, or would you call it an opportunity, whatever, however you couch it, but just a way to reset and refocus. And of course, we're talking about New Year's resolutions. So.
Yeah, and what I call it is a life planning. I used to call it a workshop, whatever you want to call it, framework, something that, I always look about these things through the lens of sort of form and function, right? So this is a particular form that I've been practicing for a while. The function of any of these forms is to help as an aid somebody who wants to be intentional, right? That's the idea. And so this is just a 30-day conversation that I've been having and trying to give people a small bite-sized piece of, I'll call it homework or an assignment, just something to take on every day. That's, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If somebody goes really deeply into it, they could extend that. But the idea is not overwhelming, a little bite here, and 30 bites in a row. And, pretty much you've got a plan for 2024 if you stick with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we jump into a little bit more of that, which just in general, how does that compare to like normally this time of year, people are sitting down for whatever period of time and going, it's time for me to make my New Year's resolution. And whether they're just saying them out loud or they're writing them on a piece of paper or a whiteboard or whatever, however they go about them. Is that any more effective, less effective? Like, what makes a resolution stick, or are New Year's resolutions effective?
Well, great question. And I think it's as probably individual by individual as anything could be, right? I don't have an answer to that question. I think all of it comes down to the question, what does a person want? And then based upon what they say they want, what are they committed to doing to create what they want? And so for some people, I think they could, approach it the way you were just talking, which is a simple New Year's resolution. I'm going to stop smoking, right? That could be a New Year's resolution. I'm going to, lose weight, whatever it might be. And those things I think get said all the time with the best of intentions. And if that works for somebody, then God bless them and let that be what guides them as a commitment. I don't think it has to be any more complicated than that, provided there's that sense of commitment, discipline, and consistency behind it. Having said that, I think, there's some kind of statistic out there that says the half-life of a New Year's resolution is like 7 days. And that's why all that exercise equipment that gets given as a gift or bought at the end of the year in gym memberships, you hear all these things. Like,
I saw a great meme. It was a guy, and he's got a picture of like, the gym, and it's like just so crowded. And then he turns back and it's like New Year's resolution or something. It's like, January 1st at the gym. It's like, it's just packed. And I haven't been to a gym in a long time, but I spent a long time in a gym. And it was totally true. On January 2nd, the gym was packed, like you'd never seen it. And by day 7, probably, it was back to normal, back to the normal. A few stragglers, but back to the normal. Yeah. I feel like you're right. I feel like writing it down, saying a New Year's resolution, like you said, it could work for some people. I can't say it doesn't work, but it feels like there should be some more meat behind it. But we all still do it. I think I still say like, I'm going to resolve to do this. And whether or not I've got, a plan behind it or just, it's just gotten to a point where, like you said, I'm just tired of smoking. I've resolved to quit smoking. Maybe the plan comes later, but we all go through it. And it's just interesting that New Year's is a time just kind of a set time that we've created to make this happen. As again, you were saying you're doing another challenge, a 75 plus. What was it?
75 hard. Yeah.
75 hard. That why wait till the new year to start it? Let's start it now. What's holding us back from starting now? Savannah, do you make New Year's resolutions?
I haven't really in the past, and it's funny, a bunch of things about 75 hard have continuously been like popping up on like my socials and stuff like that. And with some things happening in the new year, I'm like, oh, I should start working out more. That's something that I've kind of started getting into a little more in this past year. But I think from me looking at 75 hard, it looks a little too like, I feel like I need more size, like it's like a lot all at once. So I'm like, I feel like I need to just like take it down a notch for it to be attainable for me.
25 hard.
Like,
let's start easy.
75 soft, I don't know, something like
right,
that.
There you
go. But yeah, long story short, I've never really been a New Year's resolution kind of girl. But that's something I've definitely been, and with this podcast episode coming up, it's been like more on my mind. So I don't know, maybe I will this year. But
do you find conversely that you make other resolutions but just approach them differently, like during the years, like, hey, I recognize, like you said, I want to work out more, or I want to eat better, so you kind of just constantly are looking at it, not just once at the end of the year? Or
I'd say throughout the year I think of these things, and then I try to do them. I'm not the best at continuously keeping up with them, though, I will have to admit. But so I'm more of a throughout the year start thinking, oh, I should do this, and then, oh, I should do this, rather than just like at one certain point of the year. So
I think you've just touched on something that I think is broad, in that a lot of people go through the process and have aspirations, dreams, goals, whatever you want to call them. And that's that sense of the half-life of any of those things. For something, I don't care what it is, to work. And I've raised my hand, both of them, and jump up and down at the number of times I've said I'm going to do something. And then, for lots of different reasons, the fire dissipates and I'm, back to my old habits and routines and patterns. So the question ultimately is that sense of what would have me, like it would for anybody, sustainably committing to that, set of goals and outcomes. And I think that's the key. I've had so many, and I'm sure both of you could talk about this as well, just things that, I'm going to do this and I got jacked to go do it. And then all of a sudden, maybe that's not really what I wanted to do. And rationalizations and justifications to turn back into an old pattern and habit. So, I think it all relates to, honestly, the amount of discomfort or pain somebody's in. And, and whether that discomfort and pain is so significant that they would do anything to run away from it. And I don't mean to sort of characterize it as that's the only way to get there, because that's not probably the only way, but I think that's often the way that these kinds of things are identified. It's like, this doesn't work for me anymore. I want to no longer live this way. Therefore, and then I set upon a path to change it. Yeah. Hopefully the pain and discomfort is significant enough that keeps me motivated and keeps me moving.
Or the opposite, that is such a passion. Like if you're going the opposite level, something is pushing you from such a passion point in your life that it just, you're it's like, hey, I just want to keep going at this. So I've crossed that line of something I really want to do. I've seen people do this, over the course of my life, where it's just, you see like, hey, I've been stuck in this dead end job and I really want to be at this. And at some point that you hear them talk about it, and finally it's just, they hit that point. It's like, you know what, I'm gonna, regardless of what the outcome is, I'm going for this. I'm gonna try this new thing out and see what happens, and just, take a leap. But right. I think the passion has to be there.
I do too, but I think if you peel back the layers of all that stuff, at the core of it, there's something that's an unsettledness. And we could talk about it from, so let's just say you're somebody who has a musical aspiration to play the guitar and, go to the first open mic night and sing a song. The thing that motivates, I think, a person to get there is the combination of passion, but also the discomfort with not living fully into who they see themselves becoming, right?
Yeah.
And so there's, I don't know whose quote it is, but there's somebody who said, most people go to their grave with their song still in them. And if you want to see the greatest library in the world, go to a cemetery. I think it was Edgar Allan Poe, I think, who said that, because there's millions of unwritten books in the cemetery. I think that's the idea. So passion, yes. And also, like, I'm not living into the fullness of who it is that I think I was born to be, whatever that is. And I think that's another piece that it's like, I've had enough of not living into that.
No, I feel that for sure. Yeah, it's a strong emotion, really. At the end of the day, it's like, because I feel that, intensely at times. It's, man, I know I could write a book, or I know I could do this, and you find out that it's more than just that idea that I can do it. There's a lot of work involved in writing a book, or a lot of work involved in learning to play the guitar and get up and sing a song. That you've got to at some point make that commitment.
Yeah, and you got to be willing to break through the fear, right? So, you don't have any problem standing on a stage and performing, but like for some people, that's paralyzing and terrifying. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's not only that sense of here's what I want to do, then I have to resource whatever is required for me to break through, the fear and the doubt and the insecurity that I've been living with that's kept me from whatever that is. So, I think going back to your initial question about New Year's resolutions, I think there's so many different ways for a person to put into language what it is they want, that it could take that simple form, or it could take, something that's infinitely more complex. I've been part of a process where for a while, maybe 4 or 5 years, I took 3 12-hour days in a row. So 36 hours of nonstop planning to build a framework for the upcoming year. And I don't know, honestly, if that worked any more effectively than, I'm going to ultimately work on my health and wellness. I do think, going back to your point, Savannah, like having some way to keep score, that's a big component of it. So, I want to work out more, that could be, interpreted many different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think having some ability to say, I want to work out on average 4 to 5 days a week at 30 minutes, per workout. Mm-hmm. I think that's helpful to people, because then it's like, okay, did I do that? Did I not do that? Is it working? Is it not working? What does working look like? Those kinds of questions. So.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like, going back to the 75 hard, people do that because it has those guidelines of working out twice a day for 45 minutes and drinking a gallon of water and all that stuff. It has those like numerical values to it that really adds the value to it as well. So yeah, it makes sense why it works for people. But
yeah, and that one's pretty exacting. Like if you are on your own and without that kind of set of rules, like 75 hard, if you miss one element on any day, you go back to day one.
Yeah.
And so it's very punitive, I think, but also motivating. Like I was the other night, I had 3 quarts of water. I had 1 quart to go, and I was exhausted. And I sort of rested for a moment. I closed my eyes at like 9 o'clock at night. Thankfully, Whitney, who I live with, came and woke me up. And fortunately, otherwise she probably would have let me sleep. It was like, oh my goodness, if I didn't finish it, I would have gone back from day 26 all the way back to day 1.
Wow.
Which would not have been very fun.
No.
So,
So you mentioned Whitney is on board with you. Do you find telling people about your, say I've made this resolution to do something, is it a good idea to tell somebody, start spreading the word so that so you do have some kind of mirrored accountability? Like if I tell Mark, hey man, I'm going to do this, and the next time you see me, say, hey, did you do that? Or are you still doing that? It's like keeps it top of mind. Or is that valuable, do you think? Or is it?
Well, it's a great question. I think, again, it's individual by individual. I told Whitney when I was thinking about 75 hard, and again, she and I have been together for 5 years, so she knows enough about me to know that I have a history of saying I'm going to do some big things, and then I haven't done those things, right? So she was concerned for me. Like, here's another thing, and I can see the pattern happening again. You're going to make some kind of declaration, you're going to go do this thing, and I don't want to see you disappointed in yourself again. Which I totally respect. I've earned 100% of that, right? That's all my making. And so, I told her that I was doing this, and she, was like, wow, I mean, are you sure? Don't tell anybody else, because, it's okay with me. But so I said, I hear you. I respect that, and I own that. And I'm going to tell everybody that I know I'm doing it because that's what I'm up to. And I say this is kind of weird to say, but I don't have a thing about failing, provided I'm failing. I use the word failing forward, or failing, in a direction that continuously moves my life forward. If I'd done 75 hard and I got 68 days and something happened, or 52 days, my life has been made incrementally better over those 52 or 68 days. My commitment to myself is to finish it in 75 days. But I'd say going into it, I don't even know if I trusted myself, right? So I don't have an answer for you on that one, Bobby. I think it's an interesting question. I think the first thing you got to do is convince yourself. I think you got to enroll yourself. And then if it feels like the right thing to do to tell others, then you can bring in some other people in that accountability. And if you don't succeed or you don't complete, then you have to deal with all of what that means, mostly to yourself. People around you forgive you. I mean, people don't hold on to that stuff. They remember it, but they don't hold on to it. I hold on to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I like how, like, the idea of failing forward, because like you said, you trying to do the 75 hard and you get to 60 days. That's nothing to be ashamed about. That's even better than being too scared to try it in the first place. And yeah, like we said, I feel like people sometimes get afraid and are like, oh, I just don't want to fail. But if you do, it's only really helping yourself anyway. So I think that's a very good way to put it.
Yep. Now, I was going to do the exact same. Yep. Just, it's okay to fail. I mean, if you tell folks, I think you can tell the right folks that maybe are going to give you, if you've identified those folks that are going to hold you accountable in a good way, maybe help you to walk through the failures or the successes alongside is a good way to go about it. I've leaned into this. I think for me it's a good thing to help keep me honest in these pursuits where if it's just myself, then I might slack off or might not hold true to it.
Well, I was thinking about two different examples in the last couple of years. One of them was for an MS ride. I'd committed to riding both days. This was a couple of years ago, and I ended up getting COVID and was really sick. I couldn't breathe, but anyway, so I ended up finding a compromise, and I drove to Fort Collins. I think you remember this, Bobby, and I rode the second day, just that circuit, which was my version of that seemed sensible given all that I'd been working through and trying to recover from. And then a year ago in April, I went to walk this thing in Spain called the Camino de Santiago with the absolute commitment to finish the whole thing. It's about 550 miles from start to finish if you go all the way to Finisterre, which is at the coast of Spain and the Atlantic Ocean. And I did so because I had part of my mom's and my dad's ashes with me, and I was intending to basically do what they do in the movie. There's a movie about the Camino, and Martin Sheen puts his son's ashes in the ocean, and I didn't make it. And when I had to withdraw because of plantar fasciitis in both my feet, I was devastated. I mean, it felt like a failure. And then what happened, which I loved, was this community of people came around me, and they were so loving, and they were just saying, hey, there's no sense of failure. You walked 365 miles, and I literally couldn't walk anymore. I was in such pain. And you'll finish it. And it's all this encouragement came around where I was living with the sense of abject failure. Like, I have totally failed in my quest to live into this idea of going all the way to Finisterre and putting my mom and dad's a part of their ashes in the ocean, and so having that as an experience and recovering from that and the grace that was afforded me really made an enormous difference. So that's a piece, Bobby, to answer your question, by telling others and enrolling others in what I was up to. I did it not intentionally. It just happened as a matter of me kind of posting stuff on Facebook and stuff like that. It was this beautiful community of people who came around and helped me in the moment when I needed it the most. I put it all in perspective. So that's another way I'd look at that.
Sometimes you need that additional vision because, like you said, yours is clouded with your failure, and you need somebody else, or sometimes a group of folks that are coming to your aid to say, hey, no, you accomplished a lot, regardless of the level. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, just if I can tell a short story, at the very end when I could not walk anymore, I think this monastery was left open by accident, and I walked into this tiny, beautiful monastery, and all the monks. As soon as I walked in, I'm thinking like they're looking at each other like, "Hey, you were supposed to lock that door over there," you know. But I snuck in, and and I went in, and I was bawling. I was so sad, and I sang, you know, some songs that are important to me that were cathartic. But I remember when I walked out, there's like 9 monks standing out there thinking, you know, A, whose job was it to lock the door? And B, wow, that was pretty amazing, because this guy went in there and I was visibly, I mean, I was bawling.
Yeah.
Went in, sang a couple songs, and there, you know, things like Do Nobis Pacem and stuff like that, you know, Ave Maria, things that would connect me to my parents. And I came back out, and it was an extremely spiritual moment. But
I like to reflect on them telling this story to the other monks later. You know,
Yeah.
you're like, remember that time when we forgot to lock the door? That guy walked in, but he sang beautifully, and you know, he improved our day. You know, that you know,
yeah,
that's that of the story.
yeah, it was. But I think that's that piece that, to take it full circle, that I think if you want to share it with people, whatever your dreams and goals and aspirations are, share it and hold a space for something to not go the way that you had designed for it to go. And then have a lot of grace come around that. So, you know, you can just continue to either move forward or fail forward, whatever you want to talk about, and whatever language works.
Yeah. So I guess with that, how often do you normally like reflect on the goals that you have set for yourself in the past, whether you completed them or not? Is that something that you normally like to do, or do you just kind of like leaving those in the past and then moving forward?
Yeah. So I am part of a small and intimate accountability group. So I meet Monday through Friday every single day from 7 to 7:45 roughly through Zoom with a group of guys. And it began a long time ago, and we just kind of hold each other accountable mostly to what we say we're going to do. It's now become, you know, a very spiritual conversation, and a life conversation, but it was always with the intent to hold ourselves, and then by extension others, accountable to what we said we were up to. So I look at it, if you open my calendar on Outlook, you'd see every single day I just take a look at sort of, you know, a framework that works for me, which is there's a mantra that I love to, you know, reflect on. It was given to me by this woman who has a thing called Boho Beautiful. I don't know where they are, but she's a yoga and meditation instructor. It's beautiful. And then there's just some goals and objectives, and then, you know, the song or two that I love to listen to. And so I set my frame that way every day. And so it's as frequently for me as every single day. It's a set of patterns, habits, routines that I've fallen into or chosen into. And like I said, even with all that, sometimes things work and sometimes they fail miserably. And I'm okay with all of it.
Yep.
You know, the ones that work feel better, but the ones that don't work, I probably learn more from, right? So
Yeah. So what would you say is, like, from your experience, is the best way to like set a goal and maintain it? Like, is it staying with something for 30 days? Is it having accountability partners? Like, what do you think? Or maybe all of it combined?
well, there's a myth that if you do something for 30 days, it becomes a habit. That's absolutely been debunked like more
I was
times.
gonna say that's kind of been out there forever. I was gonna mention that the statistic you hear, like, hey, 30 on day 31, it's locked.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a book called The Power of Habit by Duhigg, and if you want to learn about what it actually takes to form a new habit, go read that book. The neuroplasticity, you know, that we used to have when we were young ends up in these neural pathways as we grow older that are like the ruts in the Oregon Trail. I mean, it's like we are insane, and that's how he describes it. He describes it like the wagon wheel ruts in the Oregon Trail going west. Like, once you're in them, you can't get out of them. It takes an extraordinary.
Just to digress, have you seen those? I visited. They're in Nebraska. They're awesome. Yeah, like in Wyoming, you can go visit them. And it's huge, like you said, they're just these huge ruts in this limestone where you can just tell where the wagons were stuck in the trail.
And Duhigg compares our neural pathways and the habits that we form as a metaphor to those ruts. And so, that idea, so I think it can take a lifetime, of rigorous consistency, commitment, and discipline to do anything that's worthy of your time and effort. So I'd say if there's something that's meaningful to you or to me, every day seems, like a good practice. There was this guy, I cite this all the time. There was a guy named Scott Tinley, who was one of the most successful Ironman, athletes ever. He won, I don't know how many, but a lot when it was first going on. And I used to be like a cross country runner, and in runner's world, they interviewed him. They said, "How often do you work out?" And he said, "Well, how often do I breathe?" And they're saying, "Well, every day." He says, "Well, that's how often I work out." And it's like, why? Because it works, and if you want to be, if you want your life to work the way that you want it to work, I think it's an everyday endeavor, along with bringing things like joy, like Bobby had mentioned before, and, other elements that isn't punishment. It's more like I want to live that way because it works.
Mhm.
And if it's not working, I don't want to live that way. And so what do I do to sort of transform or change the circumstances of my life? And that to me is an everyday exercise.
Yeah. Do you have a sweet spot, Savannah? Do you know of yours? Like we're talking about how this also depends on a person. Like Savannah is in her 20s, so her neuroplasticity is a little less ruddy than mine, and yours might be.
Yeah.
So she's, so do you have do you know, just for your own sake, Savannah, if you've tried something, does it take, do you have a time that it takes to stick?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I've been getting into like going to the gym more often within this past year. Like I normally try to go at least 3 to 4 times, but that isn't the case every week for sure. So yeah, I don't really know, to be honest with you. That's something I should probably try to figure out, but like you said, it's different for everyone. But
And like you said, probably every situation, like you said, if it's something like the gym, if it's something that really catches fire, you might, it might be something, man, I'm craving this. I can't not go to the gym.
Yeah.
yeah,
When I
that's
first
not how
started working out, it was like, I was, if I could go every hour, I would go. And what's been nice about working from home during the pandemic, I actually did start working out kindly every hour.
Mhm.
And I kind of enjoyed spreading it out. So it used to go like first thing in the morning for an hour and that'd be it. And then working from home, I had the opportunity to just, take a break, which is great, get away from the computer and do a couple sets of whatever I was doing that day, whatever, suited me. And I just, get another round of energy. And so I like, that's one of the things I enjoy about, and to be fair, I'm kind of a nut with this. When I was in the office, I did that too. I had workout equipment in the office so I could, continue this even in the office. So I had a little bike machine under my desk. So I often, if I was on a phone call or it wasn't too distracting, I could do my bike. I sit on a bouncy ball so I could keep my core energized and have a little, jump rope, anything, something to keep active. So I do. So that to me, that was an easy one. I think to stay maintaining on. It doesn't take me much. If I get out of it to get back in it, I enjoy it so much that, like Scott Tinney said, it's like, how often do I work out? It's about the same amount as I breathe. It's something that's just something that's ingrained in me now. I love doing it and enjoy the outcome of pushing my body that way.
Yeah.
Another thing that, on top of all those things that I think we have access to that didn't used to be the case, is there's so many different, like iWatches and applications and things that can remind us, that can encourage us, that can allow us to create community around, some kind of commitment that doesn't require you to tell friends and family. You can be a total sort of voyeuristic stranger in a world of other people who are up to the same thing you are, and do it in a way that really feels, both accountable and maybe at a distance and healthy. So I'd say there's so many different places we have to go to get what we want.
Yeah. Mark, before we have to get off here, we're getting up on time. I just wanted to have you talk a little bit about, I know you're an executive coach. You've been doing this on and off for a long time now through different, opportunities. Talk a little bit about what you do in executive coaching and just give us some insight on that.
Yeah, I'd say, well, as you would know, the business that my family owned and ran went through bankruptcy back in 2008-ish, right in that range. And, at the end of that, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. I had spent a number of years from 1999 when I became the CEO of the business, hiring my own coach. I loved the process that experience afforded me. And so when the bankruptcy occurred and I found myself, in a transitional window, I went out and just started to build a clientele around mostly coaching, consulting, advising, really applying what I had learned through my experience, both as a CEO and working with coaches for other people who owned and were running companies mostly. So I still do that to this day. I've had a couple different iterations of that over the last, whatever that is, 15 years. And I prefer, when possible, my sweet spot is to work with basically entrepreneurs or business owners or people who have organizational responsibility, because I've done it several times. I did it for my family's business, and I ended up in a role where I was CEO and president for another company. I started out as a coach and a consultant and a facilitator. They ended up hiring me as CEO and president for about 5 years on and off. So I like that role. I get that role. That's mostly what I do now. And on occasion, I was going to say, with Savannah saying what she was saying about where she is in her life, it's interesting. In the last, say, year, I've been hired more often than not to work with 20-somethings who are on the launch pad and, for whatever reason, feel stuck and feel stalled. And oftentimes it's a parent who knows me through probably work I've done with them or somebody in their company. And they say, hey, I've got a son or a daughter who I think could, really use a helping hand. And it's mostly getting out of a pattern of thought that can help them get unstuck. So I love that work. I love facilitating with teams and groups and, all that.
Do you approach, just to stop there, do you approach working with folks in their 20s any different than anyone else? I mean, I know you hear about the divide in generations.
Yeah, no difference at all. And I say that I have an affinity for, there's a woman who wrote a book called Fierce Conversations. Her name is Susan Scott. It's a brilliant book. If you haven't read it, I mean, what's the number one thing that we're all involved in every single day? Conversation, right? And it just is. She has a coaching approach, which is, let silence and let the question and inquiry do the heavy lifting. So, I show up with the exact same beginning to all my coaching sessions, which is, if I was working with you, it'd be, Bobby, what's the most important conversation you and I need to be having right now? Whether you're 24, whether you're 29, whether you're 65. I've had the opportunity to coach somebody in their early 90s once, which was phenomenal. And same question, what's the most important conversation we could be having? Tell me about that. Why would you go there? How long has that been? Those kind of things. So I begin the same way, regardless of who it is. And that usually doesn't mean their challenges are the same, but the conversation begins the same way. And I feel my role mostly as a coach is to listen deeply, and then, guide the conversation with questions.
Is the coaching ongoing? I mean, or is it just like a set period? Like, do you say, hey, we're going to engage for 6 months, or it's, what's the engagement process look like? Yeah.
So I begin almost all of my work with like a 1 month, 2-session kind of trial. Like, I don't want somebody to commit to something that isn't going to work for them. So if they want to jump in and start with, a 2-session, trial, see what happens, see what their experience is. Some people, it just isn't for them. I have no attachment. Yeah. If you get into a longer agreement than that, it kind of, I think, binds somebody to something they may not want, and they don't know how to get out, and, blah, blah, blah. So I used to do like half a year, full long year engagements, and I've just changed all that because it sometimes doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work for them. I think coaching works universally, and sometimes it doesn't work for somebody who doesn't want it to work or isn't there at the moment. So, 1 month, 2-session, and then after that, it's like, where do you want to go with this? Do you want to go for 3 months, 6 months, a year? Do you want to go another month? It's very, very, very fluid.
Yeah, I feel like is there a spot at which there is, coaching is effective at this point in the timeline? If you only, is there a point in that, or is it also vary?
It varies, and I would say, like I have with several other questions, it's a person by person, circumstance by circumstance experience. So I've had clients who come to me and said, great, I'll do 2 sessions, and they'll think, I got everything I needed in those 2 sessions, and they're off and running. Other people I've had clients that I've worked with for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And they would probably tell you that they were getting value over the extended duration of those 3 to 4, 4 to 5 years. It's just a different game they're playing, right? I mean, that is one thing that I would say is sometimes when you're younger, the complexity of life is less complex than it is when you get older, right?
Sure.
There's just more moving parts. There's probably could be a significant relationship. Sometimes there's kids. Sometimes there's kids with grandkids. Sometimes you own a company and you've got lots of employees, and those things add layer upon layer of complexity. And there's more to unpack. If you're 27 and you're stuck and you're trying to find a job, and that's really the only thing you're trying to do is get off the launch pad, that can be a pretty swift process.
Yeah. Cool.
So that's how I'd answer that.
That's good. I mean, I think it's, having that kind of ability in your life to find a coach, to even approach a coach is a big step. And then being able to really, launch off of that. Because some people, like you said, are not sure how to get to that point. Maybe they're afraid. There's too much commitment. I'm afraid. They're afraid of the fierce conversation you're talking about. Maybe I don't want to have that conversation, but I need to.
100%.
All levels, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest fears that people live with, I lived with this before I hired Stephen McGee as my first coach, which was, am I going to be a good coaching client? Whatever that even means. But, we're weird. People are weird, right? We make up all this stuff in our heads, like somehow I could be something that I would name as not good enough to be a coaching client, which is ridiculous. But that's, I don't know what that would look like. And, what I do know is I know what I'm in right now. And it's that whole sense of, I'm comfortable or familiar enough with what I have. And I don't want to risk the possibility of being put in discomfort to explore, find something that I don't know or I don't already have. So they just kind of stick where they are. And I have no judgment around it. It's just a choice, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I love the 30-day challenge. I've done it before. I didn't do it this time around. I was following you on socials though to see how it was going, but I've done it in the past, and it really is a good way to reset. And I think for me, it's a helpful process. I'm a big list maker, so it's a good exercise for me. Like if you look at my resolutions, back to our first question, I've got a big whiteboard that I keep, breakdowns of quarters and then another section of like, activities that I'm trying to stay focused on to keep myself, honest and in the moment to what I'm trying to accomplish. So yeah.
Well, so yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, you're a workout guy and I am as well. And you and I both know as a result, I don't know about I know you're getting more and more into it, Savannah, but Bobby and I have had a history of working out very significantly and seriously. And there's those guys that show up in the gym and they've got like years of notes of every single bench press they've done and every single, lat pull they've done. And I've never been that guy, right?
No, definitely not that guy.
Yeah, never not that guy.
Never. There's too much. The volumes. I don't have encyclopedias of the first time but I do like to have it at hand. At least the daily stuff.
I mean, I just go in and figure out, okay, what feels right today. I know that I got to hit this certain number of muscle groups, and I know enough about a gym to get my way around. So I just say, for those guys who I see, and I work out at a rec center, Carla Madison Rec Center here in Denver, and every single morning when I go in there, there's guys who have their notepads, and for them that works. That's why I'm saying form function, right? That's a form for them that keeps them accountable, keeps them progressing. And it's like, God bless you. I love that you love that. But don't look at me and make any judgments around me because I don't have a single note in any notepad, right? So
What's 2024 looking like? Anything fun in the next couple of months, or maybe on the longer horizon?
Yeah, unfortunately, heaps of fun. Too much fun. Actually, I heading to I'm a part owner in a company in Dublin, Ireland. I'm heading over to Dublin in the early part of February. Then I'm heading back over to Europe with a family trip to Switzerland with Whitney and her kids and me. And then my oldest brother has invited me to go down to Costa Rica. So the first part of the year is like crazy.
Yeah.
I feel unbelievably blessed. Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah.
And then I got to work in the middle of all that somewhere.
Somewhere. Gotta slide in some coaching. People need to be coached somewhere along the line.
Yeah. So I got to figure the balance of all that out. And so I mean, life is I feel insanely blessed and so grateful for all that, and never take any of it for granted. So
Savannah, anything exciting happening for you this year?
Besides me getting married, not really. So that's taking up a lot. Well, not at the moment, but I'm assuming my wedding's in May, so I feel like around March time things will start kicking into gear quite a bit.
A late snowball. Yeah, late spring snowball into May. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So I'm not doing any traveling besides our honeymoon that I have on the calendar as of right now. But so yeah, that's what I have going on. What about you, Bobby?
Yeah, nothing as exciting as a wedding or Dublin, Switzerland, and Costa Rica. But I maybe my wife's turning 60. We just had our 30th anniversary, so a couple of big milestones. So we're thinking about planning a trip. We haven't done a big trip in a while, and so most of our trips are back to see family, or it seems like they're eaten up in other ways. So we're thinking about doing a trip maybe to Greece. Sometime this year. Yeah, so we're just trying to work out the plans on that. So that could be it's in the wings. Other than that, I really have enjoyed my work travel. I talk about how you go about approaching situations. I've done a lot of work travel in the last 2 years, and I try to make each of these travel instances a bit of an adventure if I can fit it in. So if I'm going to San Antonio, I'm going to try to see as much as I can in San Antonio on top of the work stuff, or I'm going to try to fit in, as much as I, really kind of, milk every second I can without going, nuts. So I do look forward to those. And so we'll have some, I think we're going to, I'm going to be visiting Dayton here in a few days, which I always try to find something new in Dayton. And then Denver, we're having a conference here, so that'll be interesting. But then where are we going in for a summit this year?
I think it's San Antonio, right?
Is it back to San Antonio? Yeah. So I didn't get to see as much of San Antonio as I wanted. So I'm interested to see some more of downtown San Antonio. And then outside of that, I'm sure I'll find some other spots along the way.
You're always Bobby.
I think between you and Savannah, you guys could do a visitor's guide to Dayton.
Yeah, we actually the owner of our company, he runs a Dayton Twitter account. He's a huge Dayton trivia file. He loves everything about Dayton.
I love it.
I think I've told you the story. He's an immigrant. He came to America, from Moldova through Italy and Spain, and just this wild 6-month tour to get here back in the 90s. And when he was sponsored, the sponsor family was in Dayton, and he was staying with some lady, and his dad would go down to the embassy every day to see if they'd been sponsored. And one day he came back and said, "We're going to Dayton," and they had to go down the street to somebody who owned an encyclopedia, because there's no internet to look this up. Nobody knew where Dayton was. They had to go look it up in an encyclopedia. I'm sure it couldn't have been more than a small paragraph.
No.
But they like, hey, look, this is where the Wright brothers live. This is where this happened, and this is where we're going to live now. And he's the kind of guy that's really loyal and has embraced it and loves it. So we probably we should do a Dayton only podcast at some point. The Dayton edition.
Yes, that'd be fun.
Get all the goodness out there. Yeah. And I'm just holding myself in that level of accountability. I started a book when I was 50, and I've written parts of books for 30 years. I'll have an idea and start writing something, and then it dies some terrible death, either in WordPad or WordPro, wherever I wrote it. And I started the book when I was 50. I had, kind of it was a midlife, crisis, if you will. Not really a crisis, more than just, I was feeling a little down, and I started writing this thing out and got a couple good chapters written, and then it sat around for a couple of years, and I picked it back up. And last year I actually finished it. To the sense that I set goals. Like I said, I just said, I'm going to set these goals. I'm going to write every day for 30 minutes, nothing more, nothing less, 30 minutes. I'm going to write unedited, because I want to finish this book in whatever form it is. I want to say I started where I wanted to, and I finished where I wanted to. And now I really want to re-edit it. So I've got to go back and do that process. But I ended up writing about a 20,000 word novella that, was it. So I wanted to, 2024 will be the year to finish that, and maybe do something with it. It might just end up being a book that I finished. Maybe I'll try to publish it. I don't know.
I love it. That's congratulations, both for that outcome and also for your upcoming wedding, Savannah. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. Mark, thanks again for jumping on and talking to us about, resolutions and all the other good things. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bobby, Savannah. Really great to meet you, and Happy New Year to both of you.
Yes, you too. Thank you, and good luck with your podcast that you're starting up. You're getting some good practice in.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, everyone, thank you for listening, and we hope everyone has a happy New Year. See you next time. Bye.